I made $40,000 from car flipping. In the last 2.5 years alone, I've owned 15 cars. I unintentionally bought cars and then sold them for profit. The reason I say unintentionally is because I'm a car enthusiast and I just bought the cars for the enjoyment of it and was lucky enough to make profit on most of them. Let me show you all these cars. First up, we have the Hyundai Getz. I had just been overseas for 2 years. I came home, had no money, and they were kind enough to lend me this car. I ended up selling the Hyundai Getz for $1,300. Being a car enthusiast, I thought, I need something a little bit faster, so I moved on to a Ford Falcon. I bought this car for $4,000. For those of you who know Falcons and the XR6 turbos, you'll know that that's pretty cheap. However, this was before COVID, so the price of cars was still pretty low. After having this car for a few months, I thought I need something a little bit faster, a little bit more powerful. So I sold this to one of my friends and I sold it to him for $4,000, which means I made $0 on this car. The reason I sold it for the same price is because he was a friend and I was trying to do him a good deal. After this car, I made a big jump ahead and I bought a Ford Falcon XR6 Turbo, the FG model. And as you can see, guys, this car looks awesome. This is not how it looked when I bought it, however. It looked like this, which, is pretty average, but I later put some money into it and I modified it to how I wanted, and it looks pretty awesome. So I actually bought this car for $19,000 and sold it for $32,000, which out of all the cars I've ever had is my biggest profit. The Ford Falcon FG was the car I owned the longest out of all the cars I've had. In fact, I owned it for over 2 years, so almost a full 2.5 years up to this point. While still owning the Ford Falcon FG, I bought another car as my daily. This was the Hyundai Coupe. I purchased this car for $900. I needed something cheaper on fuel to run around in. I only had this car for a few months though, cleaned it up, didn't do much to it, put some seat covers in it, put a subwoofer in the back, and sold it for $1,500, which is a profit of $600. After selling the Coupe, I bought a Kawasaki Ninja 300. So I started getting into motorbikes a little bit, thought I'd try motorbikes out. Wait a minute, are you guys wondering where I got this awesome hoodie from? Go to rigitupstore.com and you can get your own gnarly hoodie. Beautiful fabric, not too thick, not too thin, so it's very comfortable for any condition. The gnarly is embroidered into the jumper, so it's very high quality. Go to rigitupstore.com or click in the link below to purchase your hoodie and so much more. I've got Rig It Up shirts, gnarly shirts, tank tops, hats. If you guys want to help out the channel and if you want to rig it up for yourself and get gnarly, head over to my website and get your own gnarly merch. Back to car flipping. So I bought this motorbike for only $2,400, which was pretty cheap compared to the rest on the market. The reason it was so cheap, it had a little bit of flare damage, but I repainted it, made it look nice, and eventually sold that for $3,100, which is a profit of $700. So after selling this bike, I was actually over a family friend's place, and they had this car at the front that said for sale on the back, $1,000. I thought, I'm a bit of a Commodore fan, especially the VS, so I thought I'll jump on it. $1,000, can't let that slip. It needed some work. But I thought, you know what, I know a little bit about cars, so I can probably fix it up, maybe even drive it for a bit. The intention was not to sell it. Like I said earlier, the intention for most of these cars wasn't to just buy and sell. I wanted to buy it to enjoy it, potentially have it as my car for a few years, but I just kept moving on, kept upgrading, and eventually sold this car for only $1,000. So once again, I did not make money just because I sold it to a friend and did him a good deal. Funny story about this Commodore situation. There was a night where I was scrolling through Facebook Marketplace with one of my mates in the car, and we saw this Holden Commodore VX pop up. And I thought, it's pretty cheap. It's nicer than the VS, doesn't have many problems. So I thought, I'm gonna jump on it. So I jumped on this Holden Commodore VX. It needed a lot of cleaning. It was filthy. I didn't really do any mods to this car, didn't fix much of the engine components. It was pretty good. All I did was clean it, and I eventually sold it for $2,300, which is a decent profit of $600. After owning this Holden Commodore VX, I moved on to another motorbike, the Kawasaki 650, which is a lot more powerful than the previous 300. I bought this bike for $3,900, and then eventually sold it for $4,200, which wasn't as much profit because it had a fair amount of kilometers on it, but I still made $300. Next, I moved on to the Toyota Camry. This car was awesome. I loved it. It was reliable, being a Toyota. It was clean. It was owned by an older person its whole life. Didn't have too many Ks. I think it had around 200,000 Ks, which is pretty low for a Camry or a Toyota. I bought this car for $2,200 and only sold it for $2,300. So I didn't make much money at all, only $100 on this one. Moving on to probably one of my favorite dailies out of all of these cars, the Subaru Liberty Sport. This car was so fun. It wasn't a turbo, a little boxer engine. It did its thing. It had a little bit of perk to it. It sounded awesome. So I'd already had a fair amount of mods on it. The purchase price of this car was $5,000. I had this car for, I want to say 2 to 3 months. Didn't have it for that long. I wanted to keep this car for much longer than that. I thought this was going to be my car for many years. However, I had another side hustle idea, which is couch flipping. And I thought in order to couch flip, you need some sort of utility vehicle with a tray in the back. I sold this Subaru Liberty Sport for $6,500, which is an awesome profit of $1,500. Pretty impressive with that one. It was a younger guy I sold it to who was pretty passionate about Subarus. That's why it was a good deal. Moving on to the Toyota Hilux Workmate. This was the transition, I guess you could say, to my passion for four-wheel driving. It wasn't a four-wheel drive, it was only a two-wheel drive. However, because it was a bigger Toyota, I started to grow a passion for the four-wheel driving industry. So I purchased this Workmate for $7,200, used it for a few months for this business idea, just for a little bit of extra cash on the side, and then eventually sold it for $7,900. So I made $700, which is pretty decent. The reason I sold this Workmate is because I needed something that was four-wheel drive. So I went on to another Toyota Hilux, a little bit older. I moved on to a 1999 Toyota Hilux, and this was a weapon of a car. It had a lot of mods done to it from the previous owners. It was a petrol turbo. It had around 150 kilowatts, which is 200 horsepower. It doesn't sound like a lot, but for a full drive, it just cruised up the sand dunes. It was super light. I did modify it even further though, just to make it aesthetically look how I wanted. And this just drove my passion for full driving through the roof. The purchase price of this Hilux was $10,000. After doing a few mods to it, I sold it for $12,500. You'd think I could probably sell that Hilux for more considering all the work I did to it. The reason I didn't get as much profit as I would have liked to is because I sold it to my father-in-law. So I kept it in the family, gave him a good deal, and I basically broke even with all the modifications that I did to it. The reason I sold this Toyota Hilux, even though I didn't want to, is because getting married and eventually starting a family in the future, I needed something with more seats, more doors. This Hilux was only 2-door, so I moved on to the Toyota 80 Series. I purchased this 80 Series for $11,000. It had a bit of paint fade. It was in pretty good condition otherwise, so I thought I'm gonna do a Raptor coating on it. So I stripped it down, sanded it back, made it look pretty awesome, as you can see from these photos. As I was doing these modifications to this 80 Series, I needed another car to drive around in, because by this point I'd already sold all the cars, even the Falcon, unfortunately, I sold that as well. I needed a runaround car, so I decided to jump on a Toyota Corolla. It's a 2002 model. I purchased this Toyota Corolla for $2,000, and this thing is an absolute weapon. It is super good on fuel, super nice to drive. I mean, the shifting in it is beautiful, the clutch is beautiful. It's a twin cam as well, so it's got about 1,000 horsepower. It absolutely sends anyone to the sky. No, it doesn't have 1,000 horsepower, but I gotta tell you, the twin cam on these little engines just make it so perky, so zippy, I love it. If you guys have been following my channel up to this point, you'll know that I have bought another Toyota 80 Series. This is a 40th anniversary. This is how it looked when I first bought it. Completely grandpa spec. Check out my previous videos if you want to see the build journey on this 80 Series. I purchased this Toyota 80 Series 40th anniversary for $24,000. Now, up to this point, this current day, I still own the black Toyota 80 Series, the Toyota Corolla, and the 40th anniversary Toyota 80 Series. Now, I'm in the process of putting together the black 80 Series, and I will be selling that car. I may keep the Toyota Corolla just as a runaround car, something cheap on fuel, and obviously the icon of this channel is the 40th anniversary 80 Series. So I will be keeping that car as my pride and joy, my beast that goes off-roading anywhere. So hypothetically guys, let's just say I was to sell the last 3 cars on this list, the 80 series, the Corolla and the 40th anniversary 80 series. I've had a look on the market to see the rough value of these cars. For a petrol 80 series in good condition, it's an average cost of $17,000. So hypothetically, let's just say I sold the black 80 series for $17,000, which would be a profit of about $6,000. The Toyota Corolla in this year, this amount of kilometers, around $3,000. And let's just say hypothetically I sold the 40th anniversary Toyota 80 series, which I never would, but let's just say for the purpose of the video, I could sell it for $35,000 with all the mods on it and just the fact that it's got a turbo and it's engineered, all these awesome things about it. I could sell it for $35,000, which is a profit of $11,000, which is pretty good. Now keep in mind guys, I know you're thinking, what about the mods you've spent on the cars? What about the registration, the stamp duty, all these other expenses like insurance as well on the cars? These are things you have to keep in mind. However, for the purpose of this video, I'm keeping those things to the side and just showing you guys how much money you could make from the profit of the car alone. Because at the end of the day, I bought these cars not intending to flip them. If I bought all these cars intending to flip them and make profit, I would not have spent that much money on the modifications and other things. If you guys wanted to start your own side hustle car flipping, what I'd suggest is try not to do too many mods on the car. Yes, it does up the value in some cases, but just try and clean it up, fix any of the problems, and then sell them. Try and look for cars on the market that are already registered. A lot of the times you can find a nice car, but it's not registered. You're going to be forking out another $200 to register that car, which, isn't that much. However, if you sell the car for more, you could be making back that registration plus a little bit more. Another thing I suggest is try and look for cars that have a service history and also kilometers that are not too high. You want to have a good resale value on these cars. That's why I've been this fortunate with the cars I've owned in the past, because I always looked for cars that had a service history and had somewhat lower kilometers on the vehicle. You've also got to keep in mind when you're putting a car up for sale on Marketplace or any other selling website, you need to advertise the car. Sounds simple, but there's certain ways you need to advertise a car. Make sure you take good photos. Guys, treat it like this is your pride and joy. Every single car that you're selling is your pride and joy. You've got to take photos of it, make it look nice, clean it up. Even polish it if you want to. A few of these cars that I sold, I even polished the paint before I sold them just to up the value that a little bit more. Take good photos, show them the service history if it has any, and make sure when the person comes to inspect the car, you show them everything that you've done to it or any of the pros of the car. Mention the cons. However, don't focus on the cons because you want to make the car sound like it's the top, top quality. If you keep talking about the cons, it's got a little scratch here, scratch there, sorry about this, sorry about that, the person is immediately going to downgrade the car in their mind and they're going to try and bargain you. They're going to try and haggle you down and get a cheaper price for it. Have a look at this Excel sheet I made up of all the cars that I've owned. As you can see here, I bought all of these cars, added up together for $94,300, and then eventually adding up all the sold price, sold all the cars for $133,600, which is a profit of $39,300. Let's just say I didn't sell the Ford Falcon BA, the Holden Commodore VS, and the Toyota Hilux 4x4 to either family or friends. I could have made more profit. The estimated profit for a Ford Falcon BA at the time I sold it, I could have made at least $1,000. The Holden Commodore VS, I could have made maybe $200 to $300. And then the Toyota Hilux 4x4, I could have made $4,000. So adding those extra numbers roughly onto the total profit, I am now exceeding $40,000 worth of profit on these cars. Be wise with your car flipping. If that's something you want to do, or even just when you're trying to sell a car, keep in mind those things I've mentioned. And for the purpose of this video, I have not included the modifications and any insurances that I paid on these cars. So yes, it is $40,000 profit, but to be realistic, I've probably only made around $25,000 worth of profit just because of how much money I have spent on these cars as far as modifications and maybe maintenance costs as well. However, $25,000 for unintentionally car flipping is pretty good in my opinion. Not only have I made this money, but I've also learned so much about cars, how to fix them, how to modify them, how to clean them, and how to sell them. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video.